Let's get ready to rumble!
Oh my God! Unbelievable! Down goes Frazier! Down goes
Frazier! It's time! You're listening to New Mexico's only mixed martial arts and boxing podcast, The Low Blow, on AdamCombatSports.com and Fight Fans Radio. It is episode 187 of The Low Blow on USCombatSports.com, SouthwestFight.com, Fight Fans Radio, and MyMMANews.com. I am Justin Goodrum, joined by Jorge Hernandez. What's up, man?
What's up? Off the air, we were talking about Gomi. Who is he? Your favorite Asian fighter of all time?
I think he might be. I think he might be my just favorite fighter. Period. I mean, it's nothing in terms of like he's the greatest fighter of all time and all that. Just in terms of watching him in pride and his swagger. I think when he fought Texas Crazy Horse Bennett in Bushido, when he just knocked him out and then just ran up the ramp. It's so crazy. That is one of the biggest memories. And just the Fireball Kid and just some of his other fights when he fought Luis Alvarado, and just I believe when he knocked him out and kind of stood over him afterwards. I just liked his intensity, his aggressiveness, and his swagger. I mean, for a Japanese fighter, he had a lot of kind of arrogance. He carried himself kind of like a Westerner. You don't see a lot of Japanese fighters, show so much personality in and outside of the ring, I guess, and pride. But with Gomi, he had that kind of swagger to him. On today's show, man, we're going to talk about UFC 172, Jon Jones defending his belt against Glover Teixeira. We're going to recap all the fights that took place this weekend, featuring Bernardo Hopkins, the alien, getting his another victory. He is 49 years old, so we'll break that victory down. We'll also recap a very eventful and I think very entertaining UFC on Fox 11 card, even though not many people watched it, featuring Fabricio Verdum defeating Travis Brown. And we'll preview some of the boxing this weekend. Plenty of fights here. You got Keith Thurman fighting Julio Diaz, Lucas Matisse fighting John Molina. Wladimir Klitschko's in action, so plenty of action there. And also, I think, Jorge, you'll have some news about Hector Munoz fighting this Saturday too on Showtime Extreme. So we'll get to that a little bit later. But first, excuse me, fight a little bit of a cold, so bear with me. You can always get in touch with the show through social media, through @TheLowBlow on Twitter, through email, lowblow505@gmail.com, and we're also on YouTube, youtube.com/lowblow505. We're available on Stitcher, Spreaker, and on iTunes. And don't forget about the Fight Fans Radio. They're available on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Ustream, and on Spreaker, along with Stitcher as well. So, man, let's get into the standing 8 count. It is the top 8 stories in MMA and boxing. And we start off with a fight announcement that is very confusing. And, Jorge, you'll have to help me in kind of breaking this down and deciphering who gets what. But Dana White announced when he was on SportsCenter that it will be Dan Henderson fighting Daniel Cormier, UFC 173. What's interesting about this fight is Dan Henderson coming off his come-from-behind victory over Shogun Rua. Daniel Cormier waiting in the wings after defeating scrub Patrick Cummings at UFC 170. It is what it is. So he beats Cummings. He's promised kind of a title shot. According to White, and again, explain this to me, Jorge. So Jon Jones Teixeira fights this weekend. The winner, I guess, fights Gustafsson. And then the Cormier Hendo winner, according to Dana White, this is his words, will fight Jones or Teixeira versus Gustafsson. So I don't really understand that. Do you, Jorge? So what happens? So for the winner of this fight, I mean, where do they go from here, according to Dana White? Do you understand what he's talking about?
One word. Oh, 2 words, actually. Royal Rumble this fall.
I like it.
Why the hell not? One of those. I'm not sure if you've seen those weird Russian American Gladiator kind of things where people just blindside each other through all these obstacles. That might be the best alternative to figure what this is going to happen, because the UFC rankings don't matter all the time, as we've discussed before. So what is actually going? It just doesn't make sense. I think Dan Henderson is kind of, the equivalent, I guess, of the flavor of the month in that division. I mean, there's no one else really making a whole lot of noise besides, Alexander Gustafsson, obviously, recently. Automatically it should be Gustafsson that gets the next title shot. It doesn't make sense to me how the the 5th and 6th ranked guys ultimately might get a quicker path to the championship than, say, Phil Davis, who's ranked higher than them. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, we'll talk about Phil Davis later. Dana White had some comments about him, about not wanting a title shot, being way too passive in terms of requesting, being in the main event. It's funny you bring that Russian American Gladiators. I don't know if you've seen this, Jorge, but on Deadspin, a video surfaced of a team MMA competition. So it's 6-on-6, and their teams of guys will fight each other. It's kind of like Braveheart. So there's like 3 refs, and these 6-on-6, they charge each other, and it's MMA. So you have you have 12 guys, 6 MMA fights going on at the same exact time. So you get eliminated by either being knocked out or tapped out. So you'll see, I think one of the videos I saw, it was like 4-on-1. Everyone's beating the hell out of this guy. He finally taps out. This guy, it's 4-on-1. This guy's getting murdered. So maybe they can do some kind of team MMA thing. It was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. I'll have to post it on our Facebook page. Deadspin has it from a week ago if you can go find that. But it's insanity what's going on overseas with this tag team MMA thing. First it was that. Then it was X-Arm, if you remember that, in terms of the arm wrestling and the MMA thing. Insane ideas, man. Nuts.
Yeah, man, and it's a sad state to where they got to make all these spin-off sports. But in more serious news, this week we also saw the passing of Rubin Hurricane Carter at the age of 76. For those that don't know who Rubin Carter was, he was the topic and the focal point of the biography, The Hurricane, which starred Denzel Williams in Denzel Washington, excuse me. Where the hell did I get Denzel Williams? Denzel Washington, excuse me. In one of the better boxing movies I think I've ever seen, to be honest. It's up there for me at the top 5 boxing movies, not just sports movies ever, but definitely top 5 when it comes to boxing. Rubin Carter, a former fighter who was wrongfully convicted of murder in 1966, was freed in 1985, and he passed away on Sunday. His troubles and tribulations were also immortalized in Bob Dylan's song "The Hurricane," one of the greatest, one of my favorite Bob Dylan songs, and the Roots actually did a song on Hurricane Carter as well. Quick bio on him: he was born on May 6, 1937, in New Jersey. Again, he was wrongfully convicted of murder in the late '60s, and it took away the rest of his boxing career. So, for those that have never seen the movie "The Hurricane," definitely. Check that out. He was a notable middleweight who didn't have the greatest record, but still was winning people. And let's not forget, during that time, there was a lot of mob interference in boxing. So a lot of the losses that he did have were either rigged or were tossed by a few guys. So he did knock out Emil Griffith in 1963, but definitely one of the sadder stories in boxing and one of the bigger triumphs when he was freed from jail, and just an incredible story of a young man who did assist him coming out of jail, who actually read his biography and assisted him in actually changing and taking his conviction all the way up to the Supreme Court. So an amazing story. So definitely for people that have never seen The Hurricane, something for you guys to watch this weekend on some downtime. Yeah.
Go check it. I'm sure it's on HBO Go or Netflix or Hulu, something like that. In other fight news, looks like Ryan Bader's going to face off with Rafael Cavalcante. They agreed to a bout at UFC 174. Bader really trying to rebound from his TKO loss from Glover Teixeira. He did defeat Anthony Perosh, but still trying to bounce back there. For Rafael Cavalcante, he's been kind of MIA. You mentioned, Jorge, that
yes.
The light heavyweight division is looking for contenders. This guy was considered one of them. But really, he defeated Igor Krajak, I just think with Cavalcante, this is the perfect time to kind of establish himself. As we get to later, even though, Jon Jones has kind of downplayed the heavyweight division, I can't really rule that out, especially with the news of Cain Velasquez possibly being out until 2015. This is a good opportunity to kind of make your way into that division. So really a big fight for both these guys, despite Ryan Bader's, up and down UFC's career as of late.
And in other news, I don't know if people should be happy about this or not, but Marco Antonio Rubio, not the politician from Florida, but Marco Antonio Rubio, a boxer, will take on Ricardo Mayorga, apparently. So this is possible for July between the two veterans. Marco Antonio Rubio, famous for defeating some top prospects, but losing in a world championship fight with guys like Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. The WBC needs to approve this fight before it goes down. Is Ricardo Mayorga the original Nick Diaz?
I think it's interesting. Well, I think you would know that better than me, Jorge. At least in interviews, he seems. I guess yes. There's a little bit of a language barrier to that. I'm correct if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Mayorga seems more, in terms of a lifestyle, seems to kind of live on the edge more. Nick Diaz seems to be kind of more pure.
More disciplined to his actual art. Yeah.
He does, he loves martial arts. He loves training. He loves doing triathlons. I mean, Mayorga is the opposite. This guy, drinks and smokes and does all kinds of stuff. I think maybe in personality, but in terms of like their temperament and what they kind of do, outside of their fighting careers, I would say no. But certainly in terms of them being a headache, yes, for sure.
It's just unbelievable. I mean, Ricardo Mayorga, just to give you guys an idea of what he's like, this is the type of dude to smoke a cigarette while he's weighing in. He's done that before in the past. He's brought live chickens to events to make fun of guys like Oscar de la Hoya. He tries to get in the minds of these guys, but let's not forget, this guy was a former world champion and defeated the late great Vernon Forrest as well. So, when it comes to that old man strength, when it comes to those punches, it's kind of like, like crackhead punches, to be honest, Jay. The ones he throw and they'd land. But, this guy he's getting up there in age. He's already 41 years old. So should people take him serious? Not really. I mean, for sure entertainment value, I mean, why the hell not? Make the fight happen.
Sure. Looks like there's more news about Jon Jones in terms of him being interested in the heavyweight division. It seems like he's been kind of dodging the issue and kind of avoiding moving up to heavyweight. With Jon Jones is interesting because you consider his body. I mean, he easily makes 205. Yeah, he has a big frame. It's interesting because depending on your height, like I'm a pretty short guy. When we interviewed him, Jorge, at the Jackson's autograph signing, he seems huge to me. He seems like a large man. And him at heavyweight, I think, would be an opposing stature. It's interesting that he says he's now 26 and wants to retire at 30. In terms of the Cain Velasquez situation, in terms of his health, possibly being out to 2015, that news came out from Bleacher Report. Would it be viable for Jon Jones to move to the heavyweight division now, considering, Cain Velasquez might be gone? I mean, especially for the UFC. I mean, you don't have a heavyweight draw. I mean, if let's say he beats Teixeira, really all you need to do is for him to have the rematch with Gustafsson. He easily move up to heavyweight. You can have not Gustafsson, but Daniel Cormier, if you really wanted to, move back up to heavyweight to fight Jon Jones for the vacant heavyweight title. Should UFC put some pressure on Jon Jones to maybe change his mind and maybe move up to the heavyweight division?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't think he should put himself at risk to fight anyone else if it isn't Cain. If Cain and Jones were to fight, let's say, Cain Velasquez is out a little longer and maybe Verdum and Dos Santos fight for that vacant title. I don't know. For Jon Jones, it's just going to be tough. I mean, what does he get out of that besides, losing to one of these other guys that isn't Cain Velasquez? None of these other guys in the heavyweight division, as far as the top 10, as far as I'm concerned, none of them are, pound-for-pound material. To me, Cain is the only heavyweight that deserves to be on that top 10 pound-for-pound list, or maybe even 15 top 10 or top 15 pound-for-pound if you think about it, Jay. So for Jones, it's too much to lose, I think, if he goes up and fights anyone whose name is not Cain Velasquez.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think also with the light heavyweight division now, there are some contenders there. So we'll have to wait and see. We'll talk about Jon Jones's kind of marketability later, but in terms of how he's marketed, in terms of people buying his fights, it's pretty weird at this point that not a lot of other mainstream fans have kind of jumped on the bandwagon. So we'll discuss that later. A couple of other news notes to get to. Number one, I think this was today. Scott Jorgensen will be fighting Danny Martinez on the UFC Fight Night card right under the main event here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, June 7th. That card's looking spectacular already. It's going to really give the UFC 174 a run for its money. I know it has McDonald versus Tyron Woodley, Ryan Bader versus Rafael Cavalcante, but I say, as we'll discuss later, Donald Cerrone made quick work of his opponent, Edson Barbosa, this past weekend. You add Donald Cerrone on there, I argue this is a better card than the pay-per-view. And we might be biased, but I think that's certainly looking that way. Also, and some breaking news, I believe your website, Southwest Fight, Jorge, broke the story about Hector Munoz, another late notice fight for him, but it's going to be on television at the StubHub Center in Carson, California, this Saturday on the Showtime Extreme portion of the Keith Thurman, Julio Diaz fight. He's going to fight Jamal Charlo. Is that correct?
Jamal Charlo. He's one of the people might know him as one of the twins from Houston. The other Charlo, Jamal Charlo, to confuse you, or Jamal Charlo with an A to confuse you even more. They have very similar names.
That's very confusing.
Both guys, both twins, are actually ranked in the top 10 by the WBC. So this is a big fight. Last second notice for Hector Munoz, who's made a career out of it. Obviously, probably a huge underdog, taking this fight on what's about. He's taking this fight on 5 days' notice, but he has been working out the past maybe 12, 13 days, as he was supposed to be the replacement for Erislandy Lara on the May 2nd card against Ishii Smith.
Oh, wow.
They were supposed to have a fight the night before the Mayweather-Maidana fight. Munoz obviously had different plans, and he settled for this Showtime Extreme card that will be going down. So, a local guy finally on the national scene again. We've been pretty dry when it comes to boxing here in New Mexico this year.
Yeah. Would a fair comparison for Hector Munoz be Glenn Johnson? Would that kind of, of course, Hector Munoz doesn't have the world titles, but, in terms of being a journeyman fighter, kind of fighting anybody at any time, kind of taking those last-minute fights, would that be a decent comparison, or am I off?
I think that would be a fair comparison. Obviously, without the world titles, like, I'll fight anybody anywhere.
Sure.
You tend to think that all fighters would be like that, but with Munoz, and let's be blunt here. I mean, the more losses he has through his career, I mean, he's at 12 losses now. Any fight that he gets is, any money that can go into his pocket, and especially if it's good money late, just out of nowhere, is good. But ultimately, down the line, maybe 2-3 years from now, he's going to have to be careful just because of his health. I mean, you can't put your body through that kind of shock to lose that much weight and then go out and fight, within 5 days, 10 days, 2 weeks, even 2 weeks notice. It's just really difficult on the body, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. Let's get the 2 rounds. It's myself and Jorge giving our opinions on the hottest topics in combat sports. Our schedules have been kind of off here. So, Jorge, I'm sure you have something that's on your mind, kind of making you angry or making you excited. What's on your mind, man?
This is a couple of days old, but there was an article in the Los Angeles Times, not sure if you saw it, but the headline is Manny Pacquiao, Canelo Alvarez, ? Oscar De La Hoya, Bob Arum are talking. So the article in the LA Times website does talk that, obviously we all know Bob Arum was top rank. Oscar De La Hoya's Golden Boy Promotions. It is extremely rare that the two organizations do businesses. If it's sort of a cold war for the more MMA fan, there's a cold war between two promotions. It's kind of like the UFC, and if the UFC had a big time competitor and the two leagues didn't have each other's guys fight. So apparently the two guys are speaking. Oscar De La Hoya, of course, has been laying low, going to rehab and all that, but he's now starting to make his way back to the spotlight. But apparently De La Hoya and Arum are talking about a possible Alvarez-Manny Pacquiao fight. Obviously, this will all have to be, and it's pending on if Canelo Alvarez beats Erislandy Lara July 12th. So it's a pretty big fight that'll go down, no doubt. This is the second. Let me correct myself. It's one of the top
3, 4 money fights that can be made. Obviously, Floyd Mayweather-Pacquiao would be number 1. Floyd Mayweather-Canelo probably number 2. And Manny Pacquiao-Canelo is probably the 3rd or 4th fight that can make the most money in boxing. And it's a fight none of us have really talked about a whole lot just because we think Alvarez has a big 154-pounder. So pretty interesting fight. And to be honest, Jay, I would like to see it.
Yeah, me too. I think it'd be pretty exciting. And considering, Canelo trying to kind of rehab his reputation after losing to Mayweather, I think it's the perfect fight to make. Of course, he kind of, it could turn into a war. I mean, if the fight does turn out to be such a, drag-out brawl, you do kind of risk Canelo's health. But at the same time, it can kind of turn him into the legend that I think a lot of fans hope him to be. I think that's a fight that can make him transcendent to casual fans. That can get kind of casual fans into it. And maybe it could be kind of a passing of the torch. People wanted to use the Mayweather-Canelo as kind of that passing of the torch to a new star. But I think Manny Pacquiao fits the bill more perfectly, don't you?
I definitely think so, but I don't know. It's just it'll be a huge fight. Obviously, it'll probably go down in Vegas or some huge venue or something like that. But nonetheless, it's a fight that if Mayweather Pacquiao cannot be made, this will be the next fight that people would want to see. I think. Sure.
I guess my topic, and I won't spend too much time on it. Jon Jones and Dana White have been on ESPN this week, and you still see the same storylines we see all the time of the MMA continuing to kill boxing. The sport of boxing is dying. There's only one big fight, Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather. There's no other draws in the sport, yada, yada, yada. And I'm just wondering, Jorge, are these guys just inept? What is going on here in terms of being educated? I mean, still trying to pit the sports against each other. I think at this point they're trying to promote Jon Jones as more of a mainstream star. And I guess we could talk about this now. I have 2 questions that are kind of separate. And I guess you can address the boxing question first. And we discussed this many times. Al Bernstein had that video blog, and I think you written an article that we talked about a year ago, stating that fans and different journalists were writing off the sport of boxing, and you had to have all these stars. And I think Al Bernstein put it perfectly. But yet a year later, it seems like people want to jump on the story that boxing is completely irrelevant. And I just want to ask you, Jorge, we're in 2014. Times are changing. Certainly younger fans have grown up with mixed martial arts in terms of seeing the fights they want to see. When you turn on a UFC, it's just automatically known that this weekend, Glover Teixeira is the number 1 contender. He's fighting Jon Jones. That's just that simple. With boxing, it's still stuck in kind of an old school mentality. Like you said, Jorge, it's a cold war between Golden Boy and Top Rank. Really kind of practices and kind of relationships that are kind of outdated. When do you think we'll see the sport of boxing evolve? Because I look at, previously when Will McClare was on the show, and I've made this comment several times, if boxing got its act together, it would be more popular than MMA. Why do you think it's taken so long just for the sport of, I guess, boxing entirely to kind of catch up on the times? Is it that much about money and greed? And it's weird. It's not so much about money and greed, but so much about money for one side. What do you think about that, Jorge, in terms of just, it's kind of a general question, but I guess, in 2014, I mean, it shouldn't take a Cold War and really negotiation tactics that take over a year to put together big money fights that certainly will outdraw any MMA card. Why do you think boxing has yet to evolve?
I think it's just because of that. The fighters have too much power when it comes to boxing, and they have a lot of pride and ego. There are guys out there that'll fight anybody, like we mentioned, the Hector Munozes of the world, and there are other fighters who obviously are careful of who they pick and choose as a fighter. That way they don't hurt their careers, a la, Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather faces, a lot of top talented guys, but it's not always the next best guy in line. So in an ideal world, Mayweather would have probably fought someone like Erislandy Lara next, let's say, or, definitely Manny Pacquiao. But yeah, he'll settle for a guy that's one of the top guys that's more of a middle of the pack or the flavor of the month, if you will, like Marcos Maidana for beating Adrian Broner down. That's part of it. It's the promoters, being careful and not wanting to do business with other top fighters. And it's good to see guys, hate them or love them, guys like Canelo Alvarez who will go out there and, risk it. He did not have to fight Floyd Mayweather last year at all. He could have waited another year and a half as Mayweather aged to get his pay. He was only 21, 22 when he took that fight. He could have waited another couple years, made it a super huge fight at that point, but he wanted to risk himself. The fight before, when he fought Austin Trout from New Mexico, of course, he was a huge threat for it to happen, but yet he took the fight. And obviously, in his favor, he got what many felt was a very close fight. He got the decision.
Controversial,
yeah. Yep, controversial. And now he's sticking his head out on the line again. Obviously after a bounce-back fight against Alfredo Angulo, let's not get it twisted. He didn't come back and fight the best guy right away. But still, bounce-back fight after a loss, as you'd expect from any superstar. He won, and then now he's facing a top guy. It's something like, Oscar De La Hoya. Oscar De La Hoya did not get undefeated, and yet he's considered one of the best fighters to ever come out of the 90s. Pernell Whitaker, another guy, he lost as well. Julio Cesar Chavez lost, and people loved him because of what they were able to put out. I guess so far here in the, whatever you would call it, the 2000 teens, the 2010s, whatever the hell we're in right now, Jay.
Yeah.
We don't have with boxing, do we really have our Barrera Morales or our Mickey Ward, Arturo Gatti fights just yet? I can't think of a super, a super important boxing match where, it was one of the greatest fights of all time that's happened lately. And until we have that between two good guys, it's just going to be very hard. Like, for instance, there's Manny Pacquiao, Timothy Bradley. Those were the top two guys in that division that could fight each other. And for the first 5 rounds, they fought a very entertaining fight. Obviously, that carried over, but boxing needs these big fights, these trilogies that are very, very good fights with guys known in the mainstream. If it's some of the lower tier fighters and there's trilogies and we know them as some of the best fights ever, the mainstream isn't going to care. And, it sucks to say, but the light heavyweight and the heavyweight division, because that is hurting, that's taken a lot of people away from the sport. And it's a shame just because we have a lot of fights in the lower tier and middle tier divisions as well.
Well, what about promotion too, Jorge? Like, remember Elite XC and Strikeforce before they got bought out from the UFC? I thought for sure once those ended up on CBS, we were going to see boxing in prime time. I was like, okay, for sure. They're going to put on Kimbo Slice on prime time Saturday night. They got to put on any golden boy fighter on there. And yet we have not seen that. The closest we got is Leo Santa Cruz. What? I don't know, in the afternoon? Why haven't we seen, for instance, Bernard Hopkins against Barut Shimonov? That would have been a perfect fight to put on prime time on CBS. 49 years old. He's fighting a guy he's going to beat, most likely. Entertaining undercard. It's not a pay-per-view. It's not going to draw anything on pay-per-view. You're hyping Bernard Hopkins. He can sell a fight for days. Why haven't we seen fights of importance on mainstream TV?
Because if a rerun from 2 years ago of like Mike and Molly can do better than a live event, please believe that the network's going to go where the money's at, and that's a rerun of Mike and Molly or something random. I've never seen this show. I'm thinking, that can be too good of a show, but I have no idea. But that's what the primary issue is that these lower boxing has, for the most part, become a niche sport, and it's a strong niche sport. I think, to be honest, Jay, I don't think we're going to see that change within the next maybe 15 to 20 years. As this is going to sound weird, as the Hispanic population continues to grow in this country. That's when I think we're going to see the revitalization of boxing in the mainstream.
That's a really good point. Because you're going to see those numbers increase. That's why you see UFC making an aggressive push towards Mexico. So I don't know. It just irritates me because that was, 2007, 2006 when Joe Rogan, now if you remember it, it was him versus Lou DiBella on SportsCenter. Them going back and forth, like MMA versus boxing. And back then I was like, die boxing, die, and all for MMA. And then you take a step back and it's like it's ridiculous in terms of wanting one sport to die over the other. It's two separate things. And just now it's 2014. It's still here. I don't know. Boxing only has one viable fight, and that there's so many exciting fighters that's not been exposed to the mainstream. It's kind of frustrating when you see UFC, you see Travis Brown, fight in the main event on national television. Even though the ratings weren't that good, he still got that opportunity to showcase his skills in front of a national audience. It's frustrating that boxing doesn't get that same opportunity. So.
It completely is, but it's just the way that the two businesses are run. UFC's run more of an iron fist. It gets to do what it does. It controls the marketing, and I think that's where it's important. But for boxing, you're all over the place with promotion. I mean, ask the average boxing fan. They won't know who Gennady Golovkin's promoter is. He's not he's not with Top Rank or Golden Boy. It's just these guys are building themselves up, and there's just more control in the UFC. Because think about it. How many more professional boxers are there in the world than UFC fighters? I'm not talking about MMA fighters. I'm talking about guys actually signed to the UFC. I mean, it's tenfold. There's probably 100 times more professional boxers around the world. So it's just so spread out. There's not a real, I guess, company behind boxing, if that's what makes sense.
Yeah, agreed. You're right. It's fragmented. Let's move on. Let's talk about UFC on Fox 11 real quick. This took place over the past weekend here. We won't spend too much time on it because you guys probably know the deal. But main event saw Fabricio Verdum defeat Travis Brown. Let's spend a little bit of time on this fight here. A lot of people picked Travis Brown to win this bout, including myself. That was not the case. Brown had his moments in the first round, but after that, Verdum pretty much destroyed him. Beautiful combinations, great groundwork. Really outworked Verdum. He outworked Travis Brown. As reported, I think Brown he broke a rib and also broke his hand. Verdum basically just outworked and destroyed Travis Brown. Besides Joe Rogan wearing a suit coat and Mike Goldberg wearing a tie, was this fight a shock to you for the entire night watching this card?
It was. Just to see Travis Brown get outclassed, it was almost as he was absolutely drained or there was an injury. I just thought, to be honest, seeing the fight, I thought he just was being outclassed and he didn't have a plan B in the fight. That's what it actually seemed like, And then when we heard afterward that, he did injure his hand, it's just rough for Travis Brown. The two biggest fights that he's been in his career have actually he's come up short because of injury, and that's very disappointing for him. But nonetheless, it was just something to behold. I was sitting there in shock, just thinking like this isn't supposed to happen. He's not supposed to be outboxed or not be the one landing the power shots. Verdum's combinations, though, give him credit. I mean, his boxing looked really good that night.
It was beautiful. So do you think, let's be realistic here. Brown was 100% and he was fine throughout the entire fight. He wouldn't have beat Verdum still, would he? Other than maybe landing a big shot? Verdum seemed to outclass him in every area of that octagon, don't you think?
He did. Whether it was on the ground, whether it was standing up. Verdum, deserved to win that fight just because of, the manner he actually came prepared. Even if Brown was 100%, what do you think? Do you think he would have outclassed him just because his boxing looked phenomenal? I hate to man crush on it, but Jesus, it looked beautiful.
It did. It looked spectacular. Verdum, it's kind of a question mark in terms of where he goes from here. There's rumors to him versus Cain Velasquez in Mexico. Both guys coaching UFC, The Ultimate Fighter, Latin America. And in fact, Dana White said that they're filming the women's season now, and then after that, they're going to start on the Latin America season in Vegas. You have to think now that's on hold, considering the news of Cain Velasquez about his hand, if that's in fact true. With Verdum, he's been on these long layouts, but he's looked good. For Verdum's sake, do you kind of wait for the title shot, or does he just have to stay active? He doesn't have a choice. He has to stay active fighting somebody.
When you're that high and ranked that high, with the UFC, you never know. Maybe he can wait out. It's definitely not like boxing where he can wait a year to you do what the man asks you to do.
Yeah.
And I think Dana's going to want him to be active, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree with you. The undercard saw Miesha Tate defeat Liz Carmouche in a controversial decision, a unanimous decision, 29-28, 29-28, 29-28. Donald Cerrone spectacularly win over Edson Barbosa. Got the submission, rear naked choke. He looked kind of rocked in that fight, but yeah, Cerrone came back. His quote was, he just said, "F it," and he knocked down Barbosa and got the rear naked choke real quickly. Cerrone, it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jorge, he seems fine in terms of the injuries after the bout. What are his chances on appearing on this Albuquerque card? Are you there, Jorge?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me? Sorry about that.
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry.
I had muted myself. But the chances of him being on the card, it's going to be, very difficult, I think, to get him on it. Well, I mean, I was looking at the card and I said the co-main event is taken. The co-main event slot is Diego Sanchez and Ross Pearson. That can easily be a lead-in fight to the co-main and main event. So
Agreed.
if you put, who would you put him against? Who would you put Donald Cerrone against in that spot? I'm gonna take a look at the rankings now. I'm pulling them up as we speak. But he's at number 7. Oh, I think Khabib is. They were both on this card. I think that's a tough fight for Cerrone if he were to take it. And I don't think Khabib is UFC, I guess, fight night material. I think he's a pay-per-view type fighter now, to be honest.
Sure.
So, I mean, who's above him? Guys like Diaz, Josh Thompson, TJ Grant. I don't see Cerrone fighting any of those guys on a UFC fight card. I think the UFC is going to hold out for those guys to be on a pay-per-view. So, now looking at this breakdown, I do not see Cerrone being on that UFC Albuquerque card.
Yeah, man, we'll see. I mean, it depends on how badly he wants to fight. You see Melvin Gillard in the past, him wanting to fight, I think, in Houston. He got a big-time quick victory, and then he fought in the Houston card, a couple of weeks later on. So we'll have to see there. Also, Yoel Romero defeated Brad Tavares. A lot of people said Romero looked impressive. He looked okay. I mean, he got the victory, certainly dominated Tavares on the ground, 30-27 unanimously, all 3 judges' scorecards. What do you think of Yoel Romero? I know you've talked very highly of him in the past. For some reason, he was impressive, but I don't think he was impressive to me as he was to other fans out there.
No, I completely agree with you. I mean, I know I've been a fan of his in the past, but
yeah,
this fight, I wasn't too enthused of that performance that he actually put on. But the guy's 8-1, and he's actually 4-0 in the UFC. So he's definitely making his rounds. I think the Derek Brunson victory is obviously one of the biggest statements he's made, and of course this victory over Brad Tavares in a fight that that I think a lot of people picked Tavares in. So if Yoel Romero keeps winning, who knows how high he would even be able to climb up that middleweight ladder. Is he ranked? Yeah, he is ranked. He's ranked 11th.
Oh wow. Okay.
What about him and Mousasi? I like that fight.
I did too.
It's a difference of styles there, but
yeah,
I like that fight for Yoel just because Mousasi is his stock is pretty interesting right now where it is.
That's a huge step up for Romero, but
it is.
It's a good test for both of them if we want to see which guy is really elite or not in terms of them being a actual contender. Personally, I like him, Yoel, even though he lost him versus Michael Bisping.
Ooh.
I think Bisping coming off the loss, somebody who's not going to get a title shot anytime soon. I think certainly to test Bisping's ground skills. I think I like that fight too. But we'll have to wait and see what happens there. Undercard, Khabib Nurmagomedov defeated Rafael Dos Anjos. Thiago Alves is back in a winning track, defeating Seth Brzezinski. Jorge Masvidal defeated Pat Healy. Going down the card here, I'm in a fight that you saw, Jorge. Dustin Ortiz defeated Ray Borg. A lot of people are hyping up this fight. It seemed like there was no loser in this bout. The scores were 29-28, 28-29, 29-28 for Dustin Ortiz, split decision. So we have to assume, Jorge, that a Ray Borg will be brought back despite the loss.
He is. He signed a 4-fight contract with the UFC. They're big on him. He's the second youngest fighter in the UFC after Sergio Pettis. So for Borg, you will see him another 3 times. And news from that fight, Dana White gave him his win bonus. So that's what he thought about the fight. I thought it was a very close fight. Just 2 different styles. Borg, extremely sick mounting and getting out of moves and with maneuvers. I think a lot of the crowd fell in love with that. Dustin Ortiz was landing blows, even though they weren't effective, Jay. He did land 100 more strikes, and I think that's what ultimately swayed for the judges. The 3rd round was the toss-up round for me. I had it even, and I scored this fight even at 28-28.
Yeah, I heard another review too, and I think they had the same score, 28-28. 17,000 into attendance, but the TV rating's not good, a little bit under 2 million, so certainly did not capture the eye of the casual fan. And I think the same thing as we transition to boxing, the ratings were not good for Bernard Hopkins' split decision victory over Bryut Shimonov, unifying the IBF WBA belts. In terms of the night, this was not the headline news, but Bernard Hopkins gets another victory here. Certainly a split decision. I saw this fight. I consider myself a pretty decent boxing fan, but not by no means a serious expert like yourself, Jorge. But I no way did I think there was a split decision. Am I missing something here?
No, you're not. I mean,
okay.
Bebu must have won maybe 2 rounds. That scorecard, that scorecard was atrocious. And the judge who actually scored that fight, I think I tweeted it the other day, just based off of Gustavo Padilla was the name of the judge. So keep an eye out for him to see what other crazy stuff he does. But check this out. This is a random stat, BoxRec. You can easily find it on there. 5 of the last fights that Gustavo Padilla has judged have been a split decision or have ended in split decision or majority decision. Only once has he sided with the eventual winner. In his defense, one of those decisions was also a draw. But nonetheless, he's only gone with the eventual winner once out of those 5 fights. So, I think there's something to that. You got to see the patterns that these people are judging with. And, judging's it's becoming more and more of a thing in mixed martial arts, I think, just because of the way the fighters are evolving and also maybe the ignorance of the judges. You're going to have more controversy as the sport develops and these guys develop. But, I mean, for someone to judge that fight in favor, not in favor of Bernard Hopkins is just unbelievable. He completely outclassed his opponent.
He did. I agree, especially since he knocked him down, too.
He did. It was just unbelievable. It's just I didn't get it. I was blown away. But you know what? It's boxing. Nothing surprises me anymore, Jay. It's just it's unbelievable.
We could spend this whole podcast talking about inept athletic commissions. I want to discuss, if you don't mind, Jorge, Shawn Porter just destroying Paulie Malignaggi. And I want to ask you, have you had Shawn Porter on the show before?
Yes, we have.
No? We had
Shawn Porter before, yep.
Okay, I remember that correctly. Okay, he just
we actually had him before his championship victory against Devin Alexander. We had him a couple of weeks. I got the chance to meet him. Him and his father are incredible people, very nice people, very religious, obviously as you saw after the fight, but my God, he is scary. He looks incredible. If you tell me right now, I want him to fight Floyd Mayweather next. I think he gives Floyd Mayweather hell if they were to fight.
Huh. You think that's not too much of a moment for him? He's only 24-0.
Yeah,
that's a huge step up.
It's a huge step up. But anytime you're going, he's fighting guys like Devin Alexander, Paul Malignaggi, and we all knew Paul Malignaggi is at the tail end of his career here. But let me give you, let me give you the top. Quickly, just the top 10 guys. Mayweather, Pacquiao. He can't fight Pacquiao. He can't fight Marcus because he's with Top Rank. He can't fight Bradley because he's with Top Rank. And then it's Shawn Porter. It's Shawn Porter. The only guy above him that he can fight is Floyd Mayweather. Guys that he can't fight beneath him is Marcos Maidana. That'd be a good fight if Maidana were to lose. Yeah, I'd love to see that fight. Robert Guerrero, Keith Thurman, and Shawn Porter. We'll see Keith Thurman this weekend. Oh, my God. Bombs away in that fight if they were ever to fight. If the Mayweather fight can't happen, I want to see Porter and Keith Thurman fight. Someone is getting knocked the hell out in that fight.
What about Canelo?
That's a potential fight of the year. I think Canelo is a little too much right now just because we have Porter championship at welterweight. He's he's smaller than I am, Jay. So for him to move up to 154, that's going to be that'll be a difficult task. But he has been ordered to fight Kell Brook, 32-0 out of England, who I really like. But here's the thing: Kell Brook's promoter is Eddie Hearn, who is the devil. Okay, he's not really the devil, but I feel like he is out in England when it comes to promoters. He is just any fight that that Eddie Hearn actually promotes is very sketchy when it's come to the scorecards. That's all I'll say. So, my God, if Kell Brook and Shawn Porter were to fight, please do not make that fight happen in the United Kingdom. I beg the boxing gods not to.
Man, Shawn Porter looked like Clubber Lang in there, man. It was very Rocky-esque in terms of just the Clubber and punches he was killing Paulie Malignaggi, man. I think Paulie should stick to being a commentator. He's really good at it. And when he steps back into the ring, it just gets weird because he's so good at his commentary job. You just feel terrible when he gets destroyed like he did against Shawn Porter. Peter Quillin retained his WBO middleweight title. It's interesting because I was watching this and watching the UFC at the same time, and maybe I was kind of distracted. But Quillin won the fight 120, 108, 119, 109, 119, 109. But I thought this fight was pretty entertaining. I don't know if the crowd was booing. I thought they were throwing combinations. Quillin seemed like he won fairly easily, but his opponent he was fighting looked decently impressive. With Cogni, he's 35-year-old from the Czech Republic. I thought Cogni threw some nice combinations there. But Peter Quillin, I thought looked impressive too. But what did you think of this fight, Jorge? Because the crowd seemed to easily turn on this, even though I thought there was some action going on here.
It was one-sided, but Peter Quillin, he wasn't able to finish a 35-year-old journeyman.
Sure.
From the Czech Republic. So it's really difficult too, especially because this guy has never been stopped. So it's kind of unfair for people to bash Quillin for not being able to finish him, just because if a guy's a tough dude and not able to be put down, that's what he is. But at the same time, if you're an elite world-class fighter, you shouldn't have a difficult time in putting these type of guys away, whether it's by cuts, whether it's by an actual knockout. You should be able to find a way to end the fight early. And I think that's what people are missing from Peter Quillin, is that excitement factor, that I guess that it factor to where he's just killing guys. And, he had it earlier in his career. He was fighting middle-of-the-pack guys. But now, that he's fighting these veterans or these elite guys is really difficult. But Peter Quillin still needs to fight someone, a notable fighter. And a lot of the guys he was calling out were guys like Sergio Martinez and Gennady Golovkin. Guess what? They're HBO fighters. They can't fight him.
Yeah.
Gennady ultimately, if he slips out of that contract, but nonetheless, he's not going to fight any of those guys this time soon. So it's very interesting that he's calling out guys that he potentially can't even fight. Maybe it's true. Maybe he really does want to fight him, but when it comes to business, these fights cannot be made. That middleweight division that he's in is also a stacked one. Martinez at the top, Golovkin, Felix Sturm would be another good fight if Peter would be down to go to Germany, but I don't know, man.
Yeah. Be very interesting to see. We only got about, almost a little bit over 10 minutes, so let's discuss UFC 172. Pretty decent card. Top 3 fights, pretty entertaining. Prelim card. Features a very entertaining bout. 2 New Mexico fighters on there, if you count Joseph Benavidez. He's taking on Timothy Elliott, and Takanori Gomi, my personal favorite, taking on Isaac Valleyflag. This is going to be a great fight. I'm really looking forward to that fight. Beth Correa taking on Jessamine Duke from the Ultimate Fighter fame, and Charlie Brenneman versus Danny Castillo. That should be very entertaining. I guess before we break down kind of the main card, what do you think of Takanori Gomi, Isaac Valleyflag? Do you think Gomi's kind of too past his prime to really provide as Valleyflag a challenge here, or do you think this is the perfect fight to kind of a bridge for Flag if he wins to kind of fight the elite of the lightweight division?
I think it's a very good fight for Isaac Valleyflag, especially because of the fact he's coming off of a loss in his last bout. This might come as a shock to you, but Isaac is actually an underdog. He's not quite a 2-1 underdog in this one, but there are a few sportsbook that have your boy Gomi a 2-1 favorite. So,
wow.
For whatever reason, they think he's. Let's not forget. Isaac Valleyflag isn't the youngest guy in the world. He's in his mid-30s. No. Also, Takanori Gomi, he's also in his mid-30s. The guy's 35 years old, and
he's fought some wars, but losing 3 out of his last 5, a split decision loss to Diego Sanchez that a lot of people feel that he may not have lost. And Jay, that was 11 months ago. I think the layoff is going to be huge for Gomi, and that's why I'm picking Isaac Valley Flag to win this fight, to squeeze out either a split decision or a unanimous decision.
Even though Gomi is my guy, I gotta agree with you, Jorge. I just think his conditioning, man, unless he comes out with a house of fire and knocks out Isaac Valley Flag, which I respect Flag too much to think that. I think Flag's just gonna wear him down as long as he stays away from Takanori Gomi and avoids this engaging in a slugfest. I think Flag should be able to technically outstrike him. I think it just turns into like a brawl within the first round. I can be it gives Takanori Gomi a chance to win. But as the fight gets more lengthier, it gives the advantage more to Flag. So I see Flag winning a unanimous decision there.
I think one more thing about this fight.
Sure,
I think Isaac has a kind of a chip on his shoulder because before his last loss against Elias Silverio, his last 3 victories were by split decision, Jay. A lot of people don't remember that, but Valley Flag has been squeezing these victories out. So he has a lot to prove by just coming out and either stopping Gomi, which will be huge, or just outworking him to actually earn a full unanimous decision victory. For the first time, I'm looking at it now, 2009 was the last time Isaac Valley Flag won by a unanimous decision. So it's been a few years.
It has. Main card, as we move up here, we see Max Holloway on here. Jim Miller's on this card. But then we move to the top 3 bouts. Tim Boesch taking on Luke Rockhold. Very interesting fight for Luke Rockhold. A lot of people saying that he is undefeated in the UFC because you kind of erase the loss to him versus Vitor Belfort because of the whole TRT thing. Considering, the middleweight division as it is, a victory here for Luke Rockhold, considering that Tim Kennedy beat Michael Bisping, you got to consider Rockhold's right there as well for a potential title shot or at least a rematch against Belfort, don't you think?
Yeah, I definitely think so. It's Luke. I don't. He shouldn't have an issue at all with this fight. To be honest, this is like the equivalent of a playoff bye. I mean, no,
really? Wow.
Disrespect to Tim, but I don't see him having difficulty at all in this fight. He's as high as a 10-1 favorite, Jay.
Wow.
On some of the sports books. So I know I go by those odds a lot, but don't mess with Vegas a lot of the time, especially if the odds are that big.
True. In the co-main event, Phil Davis, Anthony Johnson. I think you might want to bring a smartphone or a magazine or a crossword puzzle. This fight could suck. I'm just saying that right now. I hope I'm wrong, but I just think we could see Phil Davis lay on Anthony Johnson for 3 rounds, and we could see Davis going for that kind of, I forget what he calls it, the wonderful lock or something. Or the Kimura, or I'm going to see him going for submissions, Johnson blocking them, and it just becoming a stalemate with both guys kind of laying on each other. I hope I'm wrong. Anthony Johnson's on a huge winning streak, really kind of reinvented himself in the World Series of Fighting, and now gets another shot in the UFC. Facing Phil Davis here, I'm picking Phil Davis to win. He's a better all-around fighter. He seems a little bit more hungrier, but Anthony Johnson certainly has that one-punch knockout power. Do you differ here, Jorge? What do you think of Anthony Johnson as a light heavyweight? Obviously not having to really worry about cutting weight compared to cutting to 170. Now it's 205. I'm sure way easier. Do you think Johnson can actually become a contender here, or do you think he's kind of a pretender and should go back to World Series of Fighting?
I think Anthony Johnson at 205. It's the weight class he obviously feels more comfortable in. The UFC wouldn't have asked him back if they didn't feel that he can make some noise on here. But this is too difficult of a fight for him. I see Phil Davis, outworking him, maybe late second, somewhere in the third. Phil Davis to submit him. And also, I'm not sure if you saw this. Joey Badass, who's one of my favorite younger rappers, kids 18, 19 years old, he actually made the intro that Phil Davis will be coming out to. So there's a music.
Oh, wow.
There's a little music video that's actually really well done where Phil Davis is training and they meet up, and of course Joey Badass is in the studio making the song for him. It's a pretty nice track to just jam out to. Not one of his best lyrical tracks, but we'll post it on the Low Blow page. I really enjoyed seeing that, but I'm going Davis by submission.
I have to check that out. I didn't even know that because Phil Davis you wouldn't really associate with the hip hop community, but that's good for him. That's good mainstream press. He got that Sprite commercial, so there's some mainstream buzz to him. Main event: Jon Jones, Glover Teixeira. Jon Jones has been in New York. He's been trying to fight Kelly and Michael. He was all over ESPN. He's been Rachel Ray, all this different stuff. Against Glover Teixeira, we only have 5 minutes remaining, so I guess I'll get to Jon Jones' kind of positioning as a draw on pay-per-view next week. But in terms of the actual fight, I think we're in agreement here. I think it's disrespectful to make Glover Teixeira such a huge underdog. I think he's 5-1 underdog. But
Yeah.
I'm at the same, just because Teixeira's been undefeated and at least 6 years undefeated, and really his track record. But at the same time, in terms of the style matchup, this is a nightmare for Glover Teixeira. I think as long as Jon Jones doesn't get cocky or stupid, I think he easily picks apart Glover Teixeira and finishes him in the second round. What's your opinion on this fight?
I agree, and look at the last 7-8 guys that Teixeira has also faced. Jay, he's not facing the murderer's row that Jon Jones has faced. No disrespect to Teixeira. Either way, for you to keep a record that long, what's it been, 20 fights in a row, I believe?
Sure.
He's 25 win streak. It's still amazing whether you're fighting middle of the pack guys or the top tier fighters. But come on, the last 8-9 guys that he's actually faced, how much threat would any of those guys pose to the top 2-3 guys in the division? So I see Jones, as you mentioned, somewhere in the middle rounds, maybe third, fourth, actually ending this fight kind of early, and it might be with a submission.
Yeah, I agree, man. I've never been the biggest fan of Glover Teixeira. People hype him up as some kind of mystery guy from Brazil who's unknown, and he has the striking power of Chuck Liddell, and I don't know. I've never been such a huge fan of his, but we'll see. That's why they fight the fan. That's what they get in the octagon for, man. You never know. 2007 proved that anything can happen in there. They only have 3 minutes remaining, so let's
quickly go through them. I'll go through the picks here. I mean, these are all. This card to me is just like, hey, there's a boxing card this weekend. I don't think any of these guys are less than a 5-1 favorite. It's just This card is pretty one-sided. It's I guess it's top side heavy when it comes to the guys that are Golden Boy fighters. Keith Thurman shouldn't have too much trouble with Julio Diaz. If Keith Thurman wants to be recognized as one of the top guys in that middle welterweight division, he has to win in less than 8 rounds. Lucas Matisse coming back after his first fight with Garcia against John Molina. John Molina, not a very strong fighter, so I see Matisse ending it in the first 6 rounds. Omar Figueroa versus Jerry Belmontes. Omar Figueroa, one of my favorite guys in that lightweight division, with incredible knockout power. So you got the 3 knockout kings when it comes to Golden Boy stable. So expect all of them to win. If combined, if these 3 fights, they're all scheduled for 12 rounds. If combined they're more than 22 rounds, I'll be shocked. So it'll be a short night of Showtime boxing, despite the fact that they have 3 fights. Wladimir Klitschko and Alex Lepai fight. That's a one-sided fight as well. The interesting thing about this contest is because of the issue between Ukraine and Russia, the fight will apparently not air in Russia. Vladimir Klitschko has not signed rights with any TV company there to air the fight. So obviously Klitschko, a Ukrainian, the situation is very dear to him. So the fight it's cool that it's on ESPN though. So make sure that people check that out.
Yeah, I think I saw the last week, Friday night fights with their entire ESPN boxing schedule. It was really cool to see. They had a bunch of fights that actually have some importance on there, so that's really cool that ESPN's stepping up there. That's going to wrap up our show, man. Anything else you want to add? It's been forever since we've done a live show.
I know, right? No, let's go ahead and enjoy the fights this weekend, boxing and MMA. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is. And again, get in touch with Fight Fans Radio, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Ustream. Follow our affiliates, uscombatsports.com, southwestfight.com, fightfansradio.com, and mymmanews.com. Again, follow us on Twitter at The Low Blow, lowblow505 at gmail.com, youtube.com/lowblow505. And again, UFC Albuquerque coming up real soon, so stay tuned for our YouTube page for our previews for that. So for Jorge Hernandez, I'm Justin Goodyear. You're listening to episode 187 of The Low Blow. We will see you next week. Enjoy the fights this weekend.
Peace.